Okay, it's 7 o'clock somewhere in here.
Oops, excuse me. We are a big board.
Oh, we're gonna need an addition to the table pretty soon here. Minutes from the last meeting of June.
Which I corrected the time. It's that was wrong last week. It said 9:50.
Yeah.
Now they've changed it to being correct, so.
All right, has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? Any corrections?
Actually, in paragraph 9,
Oh, God.
there's an incomplete sentence.
2, 3.
When Jeff Lynch, attorney for Ms. Selke, suggested that as the two properties have been reconfigured so that the barn will be part of the newly created property, period. So it's not really a full sentence.
I'm looking for it.
Couldn't resist.
Okay.
Tom's
I
back.
need to brief you.
I'm back.
Sally, I wasn't here. You got me down
I
as.
have you there. Oh, jeez.
Wow.
We're here in
You were
thought.
here in spirit, right?
And actually, I wasn't here, but I was.
You were here.
You were on the Zoom.
You were presiding.
Virtually here.
All right, I'll fix it.
Ron did that.
Otherwise, I would like to make a motion to accept the minutes.
And
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Let me get the newest version. Sometimes my version is different than.
Yes.
Vincent Park?
Okay.
Is there a place named Vincent Park?
Vincent Park, anything about these dead trees yet?
No,
Is Vincent Park a place or a person?
it's a person. He's a person.
Oh, good.
He called because he was very concerned about his trees. And then he had a medical crisis in the family. His wife's mother was not well, and so they left town, and he hasn't been back since.
Where does Vincent Park live? Okay,
I have it downstairs somewhere.
we got dead trees. That's all we
All
know.
right. Join the club.
Lisa and I looked.
Continued burn.
Oh, with the-
Yeah, and I didn't.
Dwelling camp,
I didn't do those yet, but I
nobody.
will.
Selkie, that got shut down.
Well, we haven't heard about the certificate of compliance, whether she still is requesting that. The Scenic Mountain Notice of Intent was withdrawn, so we need to clarify.
That's gonna come back though.
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't ask to withdraw the certificate of compliance request, only the stormwater and notice of intent. So we'll have to find out what they want to do about that.
Continue that. One Dugway Road. Sarah
Know that there's anybody
Manukin.
here for that at the moment. I know they were planning to come.
I didn't see I didn't see anything, RDA.
But
I didn't see an RDA for it.
I had communication with Kelly Granger and Parsons and said that they should be here, but I don't know whether they are.
I've been on the property.
I'm sorry?
I have been on the property,
Yes, we've all been on the property,
Okay.
I think.
and there are issues there, so,
There are,
yeah.
yeah,
We'll wait till we see plans and
we have plans.
explanations.
It's actually very,
The plans looked as if they were just putting a placement septic tank, albeit bigger, where the old one was. And then there's like 3 leach trenches or something.
yeah, there's an underground spring that goes through the property that needs to be,
Protected.
That body of water, that's
it's a river, yeah, Mohawk River.
Stream or river?
River, it's a river.
It's a river.
Oh, yeah. It's a real big, it's an actually,
It was a perennial.
if you looked at it, you would, it's a river.
Can I bring something before the board that's not involving Sarah Manukin? And that is that back when we were dealing with the Stone Ridge Road scenario, we went up there and we witnessed all sorts of dry land and sinkholes. Well, and I brought this up at the time, but I just want to bring it up again. H.A. Kirschdorfer lives upstream of a spring that comes up on the back of his property, goes into a hole, and he poured green food dye into that hole, and it came up at what was then the Radkai's house, which means that there is pretty much an underground river under all of Stone Ridge Road. And Jamie and I went up there to look at number 3 because it was submitted to Ned. And there's no surface issues, but I just want everybody to keep it in mind that there's underground water issues.
Right.
That's it.
We are, at least a lot of us are aware of that, so it will be, it's something we need to talk about with this project. I'm actually surprised that there's nobody here. I've had a lot of communications with them.
Mass Turnpike.
I'm here.
My name is Amir Raza. I am from Mass DOT, District 1 office. So District is proposing a resurfacing of Turnpike from town line to town line. The work,
Both sides.
both sides, yes.
You're going to build a dome over it so we don't have to listen to it?
Where? So it is Stockbridge and West Stockbridge section we are doing this.
Going to put in the soundproof wall.
Not a hell of a wall. I want a dome.
So we are just planning to mill 2.5-inch top surface and resurfacing with 2.5-inch top course. Rubble strips will be installed on the shoulders and new slotted pavement markers. We will adjust drainage structures, clean the sediments from structures and from the pipes, cleaning the sediments from paved waterways, and upgrading guardrail and upgrade the guardrail treatments as per new guideline. Then the bridge
Upgrading guardrail treatments.
and treatments, the new end treatments.
They grade underneath the
Okay,
guardrails.
so, okay, yes.
I've been by a
Treatment.
number of nights in the
treatment
dark and they're doing.
said-
guardrails.
No, it's
Chemicals.
called an end treatment of the guardrail.
Okay.
With the guardrail end and guardrail
Okay.
ends, there
Okay,
is that
cool.
cushion kind of, which we call end treatment. We replace that.
I wouldn't want to hit a cushion like that.
So the work falls within a buffer zone, riverfront area and bordering land subject to flooding. Proposed activities within buffer zone and riverfront area are exempt activities. Just there is a small section where the floodways, but there is no loss of flood volume because we will be just milling 2.5-inch and we'll put back 2.5-inch. There is no grade change in the.
Is there any work in the settling areas or any of that where the catch basin's empty too?
No, no work on the on any outlets or any drainage inlets or outlets. They will be just repairing and cleaning the structures within the pavement.
Is this maintenance that you've done before that has happened?
We would keep doing that.
About how many years between?
Well, around 8 to 10 years, the resurfacing project keep happening on these roads.
All right. So you must have heard about this many times.
This must have done before, so.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there used to be a time when the Turnpike came before us to spray the guardrails, and there are markers on the guardrails themselves that say spray or don't spray. You know, is that coming before us again sometime down the road here?
No, that is, I think I got it last year, and that is good for 5 years, that RDA.
Okay.
But we haven't done yet. That work is not being done yet. That is vegetation control
Right.
project, so, but I don't think so. They haven't started it yet.
I have occasion to go down the turnpike numerous distances on quite a few occasions lately. And wherever there's a bridge and the blacktop ends and the bridge starts, it's like airborne. Can you guys kind of modify a little finish work on those edges of the bridges?
You don't know that
It's a
exists
small
by now. You gotta do
ball.
something like,
They're all like that
you know,
though.
there's another pedal in your truck. It's called brake pedal.
True, but if you're pulling a truck or a camper or something, you gotta, I think you'd have to drop down to 40 miles an hour to get over it without
But
a,
I don't
You're
think that's
flashing.
in the plan here.
no, but they're blacktopping, so.
So yeah, we are not doing bridges again. So bridges, we are not milling or researching the bridge surfaces.
But you come right up.
So-
Yes, just and then just, there will be small lip there, so.
Speed bump.
So will there be, like when you get to the Campusa Bog section of the road and you're resurfacing it, will there be silt fencing and anything to catch any debris that might get loose that goes that way?
Or low salt area signs or something like that.
Right.
So wherever there is excavation work for guardrail or for repairing of drainage structure, so there will be sediment control barriers, silt fence along those areas.
Thank you.
When you mill the surface, where do you haul the detritus away to? Where does,
I know the answer.
all right, well, I don't, so I was just curious.
So the milling material?
Yeah.
So yeah, that becomes property of the contractor. So then they bring it to their yard. Sometimes they give it to towns. It all depends upon them, but they will not stock it on site or on. If they have to stock it, then they need to get another permit from the town where they want to temporarily stock the material.
Right.
There is a stocking pile behind the westbound lane, or westbound rest area, McDonald's gas station there.
Yeah.
Which I've taken the liberty of going and stealing from time to time to.
Yes, I think they used that area before. So.
No, I asked somebody in the gas station, they said, what do you need? And I said, like a bucket? You don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
I think sometimes it's recycled.
Yeah, I think
Bring
they
it back to
reuse
the
it.
asphalt plants and they.
Yeah, they recycle it or they sell it or they give it to town, sometimes town wants it or.
Any other questions? No. When do you think you're gonna start this project? Is it due for the summer?
No, it
This
is,
year?
next year is bidding
Wow.
in 23, so maybe 24.
And the price of asphalt going up, I bet you that's gonna.
But
Change.
the funding issue always change, so that's why they wanted us to get all the permits, get all the paperwork in, so they never know if they get extra funding when they can start, but schedule is 24 construction,
All right,
spring.
motion to close.
I make a motion to close.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
have a good evening.
Yeah, you too.
Work on those bridges, will you?
We are working.
Can I make a suggestion?
Oh, no.
After you fix a bridge, like the one up on Route 7, can you paint it? Because it really looks like you fixed it, but there's other parts of it that look like it's going to fall down.
Painting of railing?
No, just the underside of the bridges. I mean, it's like,
Oh, I think we have district-wide project for bridge painting, so.
I mean, it's like rust.
Yeah, no, I understand, so they took care of that.
I mean, I just goose it a little bit when I go into that bridge. So those bridges.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Notice of intent, 38 Lake Drive.
Dun, 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 dun.
Evening. Another demolition.
So much easier.
Let me guess, how big is this lot?
10,705 square feet.
Not that you're counting. Uh-oh, we got the lawyer.
Uh-oh.
Good evening, Brent White from White Engineering for your record on behalf of Michael and Rebecca Ballora. This is a continued public hearing. This was first brought to you at the end of May. Shannon Boomsma from my office represented the project at the time and ultimately was continued to a site visit that we conducted, I believe it was June 9th. And shortly after that, we requested a continuance on your June 14th meeting. And that allowed us a few things. First, on June 16th, the Stockbridge Board of Health held a public hearing that was required based upon one of the variances that we needed for the septic system due to a neighbor's well. They granted a unanimous approval of the variance, and we have received our plan approval letter from Tri-Town Health, and that has been submitted to you electronically for the record. And I've also brought hard copies with me.
Did the well move or the septic system move?
No, it was everything as we had proposed it. But in this case here, because it was a variance to a neighbor's well, that required a separate public hearing. If it was just our own well, the health department could have approved that variance in-house, but because it affected a property other than the subject parcel, there's a requirement to have a public hearing under Title V, which based on Zoom and scheduling, unfortunately, we weren't able to have that done before your last meeting. So that's why we asked for the continuance. But we have since received that. And during our site visit, there was, it's really our understanding that the biggest question was with respect to the fact that our proposal, this is under the zoning bylaw, this is a pre-existing non-conforming lot. The existing home is non-conforming both with respect to lot coverage as well as to setbacks to our surrounding properties. And ultimately, this proposal,
Only to the north. No, north,
in front setback,
but not to south.
correct.
So what percentage of the lot now is,
So the existing lot coverage is 11%, and our proposal seeks a house that would have a total coverage of 11%. Realistically, the difference between what is existing currently and what is proposed is essentially a screened-in porch. We've maintained the same setback to Stockbridge Bowl than the current structure has. And the actual area that will be on a concrete frost wall is further from Stockbridge Bowl than the existing house. However, we've improved our setback to the northern side property. We've centered the house essentially on the lots. The area where the house will be constructed is relatively flat. It's an open lawn. The only trees that are being cut as a part of this are already diseased or dead.
So I'm confused because what you just handed me says
13.
proposed house will add 245
Thank
square
you.
feet,
I think you misspoke.
resulting in coverage of 13%.
But what I'm trying to say is the existing house is 11% lot coverage and the proposal will be at 13%.
You
Right.
said 11.
You said 11. That's okay.
11 and 11.
so where,
My apologies. No, that's
still with you?
Yeah.
So we're increasing 2% and that 2% is approximately 245 square feet. When you review the plans, it's essentially the difference is the screened-in porch.
And has that, or do you want me to wait to ask questions at the end?
I'll just summarize very, very briefly here. Some of these things are items that I did have a chance to discuss at the site visit, but for those who weren't present, I just wanted to reiterate again the fact that, again, where the house is going, we're not unnecessarily clearing trees in order to accommodate that house site. We just discussed the septic system approval here. There's currently a tight tank on the property, which is a less desirable configuration. The septic system that we're proposing utilizes multiple innovative and alternative technologies. Like what? Rather than a traditional septic tank that would just treat waste by gravity, we have what's known as a jet vat unit. That's an aeration unit that essentially the effluent that comes out of the unit is a dose of chlorine away from being as good as drinking water. It's a very, very cleaner effluent. The second is the.
How big a dose?
You have to treat it with chlorine first before you drink it, but.
Dose it as much as you want. I'm not gonna.
Compared to what comes out of a septic tank, it's a much higher quality effluent. And
So can you, I'm sorry to belabor this, but can you explain the system to us a little bit? Because these new systems like forced systems and this system are
Sure.
something that are becoming new to us.
okay.
I mean, the Board of Health might know what they are.
Sure, no, so let me, correct, yeah, so let me explain there. There's two innovative and alternative technologies. So that term innovative and alternative technology, that's a phrase under Title V, which is the state sanitary code, which is regulated by Mass DEP, enforced by the local Board of Health, which governs the design, construction, and maintenance of septic systems. Title V, the base requirement for all sewage waste is to go through a septic tank, which would have solid matter settle out by gravity, and then fats, oils, and greases that are in the waste stream would rise to the top. And then the effluent, the middle strata of a septic tank, moves on to the leach field. If you were to compare this to a wastewater treatment plant, your septic tank is your primary treatment. You get most of the matter out of suspension. It's not, again, it's not clean water, but it's a water that is properly can be disposed of. The second element of this that is an innovative and alternative technology system is the leach field itself. Title V, the base requirements for a code would be for a leach field to be constructed would be with 4-inch perforated pipe in a bed of crushed stone, 3/4 inch to 1.5 inch. Since that is the base requirement. The state DEP has come in and says there are a number of alternative ways to construct the leach field that we deem acceptable. Really, that's what started with the infiltrator chambers, Caltech ADS. There's a number of vendors who provide those. Along with that are different types of pressure distribution leach fields where rather than utilizing the 4-inch perforated pipe and crushed stone or utilizing the plastic chambers that are 3 feet wide, 1 foot tall, and can vary in lengths, were to utilize a drip irrigation. The thought process is with a leach field, if you have it, regardless if it needs to be pumped based on separation to the groundwater table, when you have a septic system that functions by gravity, water flows into what's known as a distribution box, and then the water makes its way out to the leach field. Generally, you're only using probably the first 5 to 10% of the actual leach field itself. The thought with pressure distribution is every time a pump is activated, regardless if it's a single zone or if the leach field has multiple zones, the thought is when that's designed, you're utilizing your entire leaching area by the fact that the entire footprint is receiving water at the same time. So in this case, what we've done is we've utilized the jet bat pretreatment unit in lieu of a traditional septic tank, and that has an aeration unit, which allows, rather than a septic tank is designed to have waste flow into it and have approximately 3 days of detention time. So again, thinking about everything, all the waste stream that comes from a residential use, approximately 3 days is enough time for that water to sit in a tank where everything that should be retained in the tank with the solid sludge settling down to the bottom of the tank, the fats, oils, and greases rising to the top, since that's less than the weight of water, and that middle wastewater is what goes out. The jet bat unit goes a step further. That waste stream comes in, we have an aeration unit that it's a fan and it blows, and it's a mechanical way of increasing the separation, retaining more sludge within the septic tank so that the water that is leaving that unit is much cleaner. There's much less of a bacteria and other coliform that you would typically do a test on to determine if you have a contamination or not. The other thing with a leach field is the leach field, if a septic tank is your primary treatment in a wastewater treatment plant, your leach field is your secondary treatment and your method of disposal. All the wastewater treatment plants, ultimately, they go through a number of bar screens, clarifiers, sludge is settled out, treatment, chemical treatment may be applied, and then there's an outfall basically to the Housatonic River. Every wastewater treatment plant, I believe in Berkshire County, aside from North Adams or Williamstown, goes into the Housatonic River. In this case here, our method of disposal is into the native soil on the property, and then that effluent, once it's distributed to the leach field, it will percolate down through the select field that is brought in. There's a very specific stand that is required to be utilized for a raised system. Obviously, we have a relatively shallow water table here, so this is a raised system. But ultimately, the secondary treatment is that water flows through the soil and then eventually will reach the groundwater table, and that is the method of disposal. A septic tank is your treatment, your leach field is your disposal. And in this case here, we've utilized, and really the Department of Environmental Protection favors these technologies because, again, they provide a higher level of treatment. We have cleaner water going into the ground. The other thing that's important to note that, so what we've submitted is a plan approval letter. Ultimately, before we have a permit to construct the system, the designated installer will have to sign for their permit. Once the system is installed, in this case, based upon our variance approval from the health department, we have a number of things that we need to do. We need to do a baseline water quality test on our own water supply well, as well as our neighbors. And then the owner also needs to sign a maintenance contract with a licensed wastewater operator who will be signing a minimum 2 years as the start off, and then they'll have an annual contract going forward that says that they will come out and they will do a test on the jet bat to verify that the system is actually functioning the way that the DEP has said that it have required it to be able to perform. It must be a certain level quality of effluent in order for it to be deemed in compliance with its remedial use approval. That's the mechanism. The remedial use approval is the mechanism which DEP says we as designers are allowed to use the system and take these size reductions or separation to the water table. Just to take a step back with regards to the design for this, by utilizing multiple innovative and alternative technology systems, we have been able to reduce the footprint and maximize how far away the leach field can be from Stockbridge Bowl through the use of those technologies. If we utilized a conventional septic tank and a conventional leach field, our footprint would be twice the size, which would likely be more leaching area closer to the bowl, as well as more leaching area in closer proximity to our wetland off to the south. So we have, at greater expense, proposed a system that will not only provide a higher level of treatment to start, we have an obligation on an ongoing basis, and it also gets recorded against the deed, that there will always be a maintenance contract operator to ensure that both in this case here, that the jet bat treatment system, as well as the Perk-Right drip dispersal is operating properly. The nice thing about the maintenance contract, in my view, some people may argue or complain that it's an ongoing expense for the homeowner. I take the other side of that and saying this is, in my view, cheap insurance to ensure that this very expensive and sophisticated septic system, if there's something that is not working properly, to proactively understand that there is a problem and have it repaired is generally a much better outcome than generally when people find out they have a problem is on 4th of July weekend with a house full of people. Alarms are going off and so in this case here, by having the maintenance contract as an ongoing requirement here, in our view, this is a much better situation for Stockbridge Bowl and for the neighborhood going forward versus a tight tank, which if there's a power failure and the alarm doesn't go off, it will still possibly receive waste. And a tight tank is a self-contained holding tank, and with regular use that has to be pumped once a week. And I would suggest that having a septic hauler once a week have to uncover that tank and pump it out is a much greater potential contamination or issue for Stockbridge Bowl than having this type of system in place.
So, question here, and that is, looking at the future down the road with our performance standards.
Yes.
I just want to say that it probably will be necessary for the contractor who is going to maintain this system and the pumps and everything else to sign off on the order of conditions that we issue.
We welcome that. Frankly, that's it. It's Harvard on my end.
Prior to that, I have a few questions.
Please.
One,
Can I just do an editorial comment on what he just said?
yep, sure.
I think that it was great, Brett.
Thank you.
A lot of the conservation commissions require this now around the lake. I know in, what is it, Monterey, it's 150 feet. Anybody closer than 150 feet?
No. So in this case here, and so there's two different, so the town of Monterey, I think they've just switched back to Title V, but at one point they required the leach field to be 150 feet away from the well for new construction. In Monterey, they've adopted a local bylaw that within 400 feet of Lake Garfield or Lake Buell, if you are proposing an on-site sewage disposal system, you must utilize a pretreatment, innovative, and alternative. So JetBat is one of the longer duration, reliable systems we feel comfortable, but there's Advantex pretreatment units that use pods. We designed and had those at White Pines, and they've been operating for 20 years and work great. There's a number of different, the DEP is a part of their approvals. They have remedial use approval, which is, in this case here, it's an existing system that is we're doing our best we can with what we have here. And then they also have general use approval. So if you're building a brand new house where you must comply with Title V, they still allow you to utilize those systems. We just can't take advantage of some of the reductions that we need for existing developed sites where we're essentially where maximum feasible compliance is the term in Title V. And in this case here, having multiple innovative and alternative technology systems with maintenance contracts, with a variance in place from the Board of Health authorizing the location of that system is maximum feasible compliance with Title V as compared to utilizing a tight tank or proposing to be within 100 feet of a neighbor's well without a pretreatment system.
One other thing,
Lisa, I've been really curious to hear her
Yes,
question.
well, my first question is, do you have approval for under LPOD for this?
No, so traditionally, the way this process will work is we start with conservation. That's generally the way this process will go. We're hopeful.
That's traditionally for you, or that's the town process? Because I mean, I'm not comfortable signing off or recommending anything if it goes against LPOD.
Well, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because that is one of the points that I call out here is, so for those who aren't familiar, within the zoning bylaws, the Lake and Pond Overlay District, which regulates up to 150 feet away from the high water line of Stockbridge Bowl, which in this case is our entire property.
Yep.
And one of the main performance standards of the Lake and Pond Overlay District is you are not allowed to cover greater than 15% of your property with any impermeable surfaces between roofs, paved driveway. Actually, you're not allowed to have any paved driveways in the LPOD, but roof structures, canopies, and even with our proposal exceeding what is existing currently, we are proposing a 13% lot coverage. So my suggestion when we get to the planning board is we actually meet all of the performance standards within the Lake and Pond Overlay District. We provide a robust stormwater management system where there's none currently. We maintain all the healthy trees that are existing on the property, certainly within 35 feet. We have enhanced our vegetative buffer both to the south and
The 11% houses there.
May I ask you
these are all
something?
the things.
So can I-
You haven't,
I'm not paying
I
attention.
have actually two more questions. Did you respond to the DEP comments?
we submitted a response to that, I believe, shortly after the first meeting.
We have that response. Okay, so I'd like to look at that. And the distance to the bowl is 35 feet?
It is. It is 34.82.
34.82. How much buffer is being lost? How much additional buffer is being lost with this? Is that-
I would say you're actually gaining buffer as a net result of this project here with the area that we're converting from. In this area here where we have a rain garden actually proposed, we have a vegetative buffer between the wetland. We're actually gaining buffer as a net result of this project.
How are you gaining buffer?
We're taking area that's currently maintained lawn and providing with more natural vegetation.
But that's not more land, you're just improving, you're doing an improvement.
Well, I would say taking an area that's woodland with no ground cover and providing a more natural vegetative buffer or converting maintained lawn to a more vegetative buffer is an improvement.
It's an improvement, but it's not more buffer. It's an improvement. You're not gaining buffer.
If you're converting maintained lawn to a more vegetative surface, you are gaining buffer.
Well, the buffer zone is the land itself. The distance from the bowl to the house, that's the buffer. Whether it's, no matter what's growing there, that's still the buffer zone. So we may be talking semantics, but you're improving, you're not gaining.
We're maintaining a setback, but we're improving what occurs within that setback is a fair characterization.
so my question is, what boards have you not seen? You haven't seen the planning board yet?
Correct.
What about the selectmen? Do you have to go before?
The selectmen won't even see us until we've received conservation and planning board approval.
I do know in the Wetlands Protection Act, it said that you're supposed to get all permits possible before coming to us. That's in the Wetlands Protection Act.
Correct.
So I don't know why we're coming first. Because you could get these other permissions before you come to us.
Well,
It just seems to me as if you want our approval to buttress your case when you go before the planning board and the other. Like Concom has signed off on this, but you're supposed to get their approval before you come to us.
well, I'll be honest with you, that's a situation where different board members have a different opinion of that. And in the 18 years that I've been doing this, the traditional process has been the planning
I'm
board.
talking about what's in the law,
Yeah.
not what you traditionally do.
Brad, let me speak a little bit here to
Please.
Tom's point. And that is that on more than one occasion, our comrades, if you wish, I don't know what else you could call them other than what Trump calls us, whatever. They go in and say, oh, we've got the Conservation Commission's approval. Well, you know, that's fine. They came to us with a basic idea of what they wanted to do. And we said, well, you know, it's okay. We went for a site visit, looked at it. You know, I mean, did we go through this particular process here? Not necessarily, but they have the gonads to walk into the planning board or the selectmen and say, conservation signed off on this. I will tell you that the engineer or the representative from the company that does this most frequently is not in the room. And so we're getting a little skittish about this. And so I think we, to Tom's point, ought to go in the direction of what we are permitted by law to do. That is, you go to the planning board, you go to the select board, whatever the order of events is, and you come back to us with your final plan, because the planning board might tell you to knock this corner off the house. The planning board might tell you that, you know, the combination of square footage of the house and the septic field is something that they can't permit. We don't know that today.
What I can say to that is, in most special permits, and for instance, the city of Patio reads it off every time they're reading a decision, is any permit is still subject to all other local, state, and federal rules and regulations. So even if you gave us permission tonight, we still need that, both special permits in this case, the Lake and Pond Overlay District as well as the Select Board special permit. So,
but do you get my drift?
I understand what you're saying. Yes,
either one of those boards, and you say the Concom has signed off on this, they're going to be more likely to sign off on it themselves than if we say we're putting this on hold until we hear from you.
Right. And we frequently ask presenters, I mean, I've been away for a while, but when I was here before, we frequently used to ask people to go to the planning board first because it helped clarify our decisions.
I think for this
think that might be
particular
the-
project, that's really important because you're asking for an increase from the allowable 10%. I understand that it's already 11%.
yes.
But you're asking for it to go to 13%. And that to me is at the lake, we talked about this on site, is problematic. I was looking here at the patio thing. Did they go with the idea of using a patio instead of a structure?
So one of the things that we still, to reiterate the discussion that was had, just so everyone has the benefit of hearing this, the question was raised, would reconsider a reduction of the house or elimination of the screened-in porch? What we'd be willing to do is construct the porch, put in place a deed restriction before we were able to receive a building permit that, first off, that the porch would never be enclosed, and that would be surrounded by a permeable surface underneath. It would still have technical posts for a structural support for a roof over it. It would still have stone around the entire perimeter to help infiltrate the runoff, much like we have the drip edge around the perimeter of the house. But admittedly, with the idea of trying to have a first floor restroom that's accessible for multiple generations. You know, we spent a great deal of time revisiting what floor plans could we work and still have some sort of patio. Admittedly, to go from having a patio to not having one, I think would be, or a porch, pardon me, would be a loss as a part of this process here. And in our opinion, with what we proposed for the additional buffer plantings, the other improvements that will be made as a net result of this project, and the willingness to propose a deed restriction here, we feel represents a net improvement to the buffer zone, to the project, and to the neighborhood.
My vote would be to get the LPOD approval before we approve it.
But I mean, you understand that this is, the problem that we have with this in particular is cumulative. I mean, if every piece of property around the lake says, well, we're making some improvements, but we're making the house bigger, and we're now
Little bit.
bigger than 10%, the cumulative effect in the long run is going to be detrimental to the lake for sure. And I just have one question for Nick. The maintenance contract for the jetpack is going to go into their deed, that they have to have this maintenance contract in place?
Yeah.
It will.
Who monitors that?
The health department, they won't issue a certificate of compliance until we have that in
No, but
place.
3 years down the
Yeah,
line here.
When everybody's
and everybody
forgotten.
says it's still working. Who are they saying it's still working?
Actually, so the health department has a list of all the systems that require these inspection contracts. And they have the person who signed as the responsible party for that contract. If somebody does not have their inspection done, or they haven't submitted the report by the deadline that they have based on when the system goes online, the health department has the authority to issue them I don't know the name of the order that they would issue, but they have legal jurisdiction to enforce that inspection occur.
And is there teeth in that contract to force them to repair it, not just to maintain it? If there's issues, what happens?
That is correct. Much like if you are, as a homeowner, you're getting to sell your house and you fail a Title V inspection, you'll receive a letter from the health department that says you have 2 years to upgrade your system. Or if you have a system where you're not selling your house and your leach field's breaking out on the yard,
Right.
and someone complains, you'll get an order from the health department that says you have X number of days to, remedy the situation, and then this much time to come up with a more
I'm
permanent
just asking,
solution.
because I've heard
Sure,
scenarios of people waiting until they sell before they fix things.
I have I'm sorry.
I was just wanted to try to answer Don's question. So sorry, Nick.
Bring your chair.
Nick Ariety, I'm an attorney representing the applicants, working with Brent, obviously. And so to Tom's question, for the projects that I've had, I don't recall whether or not we, put a post-acquisition deed restriction on. I suppose one could be recorded after the fact, which would attach to the chain of title. We just sold a property that had a jet bat installed on it,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just recently. And I went through, as the counsel for the buyer, actually in that case, went through the whole process with Board of Health, with the contractor, with the engineer. Maintenance occurred regularly. Board of Health, this was in Egremont, by the way, knew everything about the system. It's quite detailed, and there's a real comprehensive follow-up that occurs now. Including a deed restriction, I don't think there'd be any issue to that. In the past, we've done deed restrictions that are related to special permits, which attach. I know we've had on the bowl, not on this side, I think it was on the other side, a few porches that were covered, and in fact, those resulted in deed restrictions as well. So
Yeah, we've done that before.
yeah, no, it's been not an uncommon way to bind the property and bind successive owners for that obligation, not only from the health and Title V perspective, but from just a continuity and kind of notice to owners that's an additional ongoing obligation. So I don't think that would be a problem at all in this case, and we could certainly do that. I just wanted to make a couple of comments if I could. So I'm not aware, like Brent, I've been doing this for a while, actually, 12 years. And to the extent that there's a standard through permitting, there is. And this is, we do kind of follow along a typical progression, which results in your kind of final permit to be granted at the end of the day, which authorizes the applied for use. And, oftentimes the ultimate permit granting authority, I think in every town that around here, is the select board. So that's why we have a progression. And typically there are kind of successive authorities that build with that, and every grant of a permit, whether it's a notice of intent or a planning board, whether it's under LPOD or site plan review or
Floodplain overlay,
or the
Scenic
Mountains Act. They're conditional, subject to grant of that final special permit.
Does say in the law
yeah.
that we're the last ones. It says right.
Yeah, well, that may be the case, but the practice, I can tell you the practice doesn't follow that.
Don't lawyers go by the law in their practice? Or-
Well, we'll go by whatever's advisable for the project for our clients, for sure. Yeah.
Well, I know.
No question about that. But there's.
Imagine you'd adhere.
So I've never encountered a situation where I'm just saying it. So if this is a rule of the Conservation Commission here, then we should know about it, because it will dramatically alter the way that we.
We have taken it up with other
Yeah.
boards. We have met with them and tried to work it out with them. But
Yeah.
in this particular case, I agree, the lake and pond overlay, those issues should be decided
Yeah,
first.
I really
Right,
want to
and-
hear what they have to say.
And so I appreciate the perspective, and so
You certainly have the right to ask for that. We have
I'm not
the right to ask for that.
Yeah, I'm not denying that. All I'm saying is that
What are you?
there has been, I'm explaining the process that we've followed in virtually every other project. That's all. Okay, so it is out of the ordinary ultimately to require that in an application for a special permit process. So it's out of the ordinary.
We've asked people to go to the.
It's not the standard practice. So that's the point that I'm making.
And why is it in the law that it is?
I've never seen this portion, and I don't want to argue this fact with you.
I'll dig it up for you.
That's fine, you can dig it up. In any event, the one point that I wanted to make was that, this process is not one that has very many bright lines to it. Okay, it's a process that is a comprehensive analysis of a property, of a building, of conditions that are existing at the time. If you're compliant, for example, with all setbacks, with all of your zoning requirements, then you're stuck with that, right? You don't get to expand beyond what the dimensional requirements, density requirements are for that property. You absolutely have to adhere to them. The law has found that there are special cases or special conditions with properties and structures that are existing non-conforming. In other words, they became non-conforming prior to the enactment of zoning or prior to the enactment or modification of that zoning law that rendered them non-conforming. Therefore, they're legally non-conforming. So they have this status. What the law says is, in fact, that particularly 1 and 2 family residential structures, which are existing and non-conforming, have a special right and exception under Chapter 40A, Section 6, to ask for an alteration, a reconstruction, and in fact, an intensification or an expansion of an existing nonconformity. However, what the law requires, and not only the statute, not only local bylaw, but what the law through controlling case law requires is an analysis by permit granting authorities, okay, to look at what the existing nonconformities are, identify them. And then if there's compliance, then, they're entitled more or less by right. However, if there are expansions, what the law requires is kind of a second part of the test. If the expansion is an additional nonconformity, in other words, if you're nonconforming on the south side and all of a sudden you're trying to extend into the south side, then that would not be permissible. So that would be denied.
13% count as that.
So that would not. The other scenario is when you're expanding an existing nonconformity, not creating a new nonconformity in another setback in height, in frontage, and wherever. But if you're expanding or intensifying, is what the law says, that nonconformity, the permit granting authority can then identify that and needs to weigh factors to make a determination as to whether or not, in this case, in this scenario, in this example, whether that new proposed non-conforming condition is in fact substantially more detrimental or more negative to the neighborhood in general, which is as articulate as the law is here, than the existing non-conformity.
So where,
Okay, so
that's the question.
yeah.
There's a town bylaw that gives us the authority to protect the buffer zone up to 100 feet, 200 feet from the lake? 200 feet from the lake.
Yeah.
So this is 35 feet from the lake and you are taking up more of the buffer zone. So that is, that's our concern here as a conservation commission.
Right, well,
There's the expansion in the DOD, but there's also the buffer zone. And it is more buffer zone, very, very close to the lake that's being lost. I understand there's some improvement, but there's also loss of buffer.
so I'm not going to argue the conservation aspect and that aspect. I'm leaving that up to the
That's our concern.
But I'm just putting the big kind of picture in that I don't think that necessarily a bright line or a bright rule is necessarily applicable. Rather, it's a case by case basis and analysis.
Can I make one comment on this?
Sure.
So you were saying that one of the legal tests is if it's detrimental to the neighborhood.
Right.
And Sally made a very good point. This continual kind of incremental extension of the size of homes in Stockbridge Bowl. And this is a real concern in this town.
Right.
So if we just kind of said, oh, well, okay, you can have that, we'd be ignoring a concern that a lot of, and it's not my concern. It's a concern that a lot of the townspeople have.
Right, and I that's why I'm saying that you don't have an obligation to approve them all, but you have an
No, I
obligation
understand.
to look at the particular circumstances, look at the property, look at the setting, look at the neighborhood, look at what's being asked, because some are minor and some are much more
I
significant.
mean, I feel like our main obligation is enforcement of the wetlands protection.
I agree.
Louise and company, it's something we don't take a real hard look at these meetings that is right here in front of my face. Local upgrade approvals per 310 CMR 15.40, whatever. Applicant requests 50-foot reduction in required 100-foot setback from the SAS to private water supply well. Actual distance provided is 50 feet. Per 310 CMR, applicant requests 6.5 reduction in required 10-foot setback from septic tank to the cellar wall. Actual distance provided is 3.5 feet. Per 310 CMR, applicant requests 10-foot reduction in required 20-foot setback from SAS to the cellar wall. Actual distance provided is 10 feet. Per 310 CMR, applicant requests 17-foot reduction in required 25-foot setback from septic tank to the bordering vegetated wetland. Actual distance is 8 feet. Per 310 CMR, applicant requests 21-foot reduction in required 25-foot setback from SAS to bordering vegetated wetland. Actual distance provided is 4 feet, 25-foot setback per jetpack, whatever that means. 310 CMR, applicant requests 5-foot reduction in required 10-foot setback from SAS to the property line. Actual distance is 5 feet. You know, these things really, these individual things, you know, per se, have really not been put on the table vocally.
But weren't those what was approved by the Board of Health?
They were approved by the Board of Health, and we had the leach field located when we had the site visit, and it's,
My
This
biggest,
is all 310 CMR. This is
that's
not-
Title V, that's
This
sanitary code.
has nothing to do with the Board of Health.
And then
Yes, it does. They actually, by issuing the plan approval letter, they have granted us all of those local upgrade approvals.
Okay.
And in this case here, because one of those approvals required to be within 100 feet of a well that was on a neighbor's property, we had to have an actual public hearing that was noticed to the public and to the abutters via certified letter before they could take a vote to approve all of those. So the plan approval letter that we've submitted identifies every one of those rectangles that has a reference to.
So you have been to the planning board.
no, that's
Board of Health.
Board of Health.
Board of
This
Health.
is Board of Health.
okay,
Yes.
so my concern is still what I said at the site visit. You're asking to go from 11% to 13%, and they are not willing to trade off the patio for the bedroom downstairs. So I get that we're getting some vegetation down on the lake, which is of course what we always want. But it also seems to me that what we're asking for, or at least what I would ask for, is not being considered by the applicant.
Let me,
Oh, go.
please, Jamie, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just, you know, and I was starting to respond earlier before we took some different discussions here, but a few things, and it's to the process with respect to, you have your Conservation Commission, Wetlands Protection Act, Town Wetland Bylaw, Planning Board, Lake and Pond Overlay District, Select Board, Pre-existing Nonconformity. Each board has your own set of individual regulations. There's a complement to each other. And again, just not to beat the dead horse here, but traditionally it has been when we've appeared before the planning board, they have wanted to know that the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission have approved it. When we appear before the select board, they want to know that the planning board, conservation and health department. So that's just been the typical process. And hearing the feedback with respect to the planning board, we're happy to address that. We've identified, even before we filed the notice of intent, I think maybe before you rejoined the commission, we had actually identified that we will be coming forward with an application that will increase the square footage on a non-conforming lot. So respectfully, we've tried to be direct with respect to what it is ultimately that we're asking for. No, we did not do a point by point on the local upgrade approvals, But we did note certainly that the septic system was requiring a great deal of relief from the health department, which in their view, what we're proposing is a much better alternative still than a tight tank that requires to be pumped almost weekly on a regular basis. To answer the multiple points that have been raised, just with respect to development around the lake, what is being done by right or without regulation. What everything Nick just said is we have a number of legal tests that we need to pass with different boards, not just the Conservation Commission, but the Planning Board with respect to the Lake and Pond Overlay District. And then for the selectmen, essentially under 40A, the State Zoning Act, really, which enables the town zoning bylaw to be in place. And the beautiful thing about a special permit is right in its word. It's special. It's unique to that property. It's recorded and it sets specific conditions, requirements, performance standards, and requirements that may be required before either a building permit is issued or a certificate of occupancy is issued or a deed restriction that must be put in place before a structure can be occupied. And that, in my view, is the power of a special permit as compared to something that is a by right project.
Well, but I would add this, though. The term special permit can be misleading because in many states, in fact, the majority of states, special permits are called conditional permits, not special permits. And it's when a property meets conditions that will make it, not obnoxious or, detrimental to the zone it's in. In other words, it's in a zone, but where it is in the zone, because of its location or whatever, its extent of land, it meets conditions that allow a certain thing to happen. So the special thing isn't like we're giving you special permission. It's like, do the conditions exist where this won't be detrimental to the neighborhood or.
And in this case, I would say the Stockbridge Planning Board and the Stockbridge Board of Selectmen have the ability to set those conditions. We are making a proposal. Each one of those boards, before they give an approval, may say, we accept your proposal. We will accept your proposal if you do X, Y, and Z. And then we have a choice of complying or not complying.
Right, if you meet the conditions that would be required.
Right. Well, there's two different, there's within the regulation, there's performance standards.
Right.
For instance, the Lake and Pond Overlay District requires no greater than 15% lot coverage. When we file our Lake and Pond Overlay District special permit, we will be able to demonstrate at the time of application, we comply with that standard.
Jamie?
I can appreciate that for the deed restriction for the porch. That's very helpful. I can appreciate the upgrade in the septic system. Very helpful. But we still have to get stuck on, we're already at 11% where we have to be at 10 and we're going to 13. I get to finish.
Please.
And in the description of special permit is longer than just more detrimental to the neighborhood. There is a word, may be more, which isn't measurable or quantifiable. We can't just, do a formula. So it becomes very difficult when it's a want, not a real need. And how do we assess what a real need is? But I do believe, to go back to Sally's point, that we need to go back or go start at planning and come back to us. We need to hold. That's my opinion, but so it's not a no, just.
Have you got a scheduled planning board?
We were waiting the outcome of this evening in terms of determining our next steps. And I just wanted, that's a great summary and we don't disagree necessarily with your points. Please note, what's before you this evening is just a notice of intent under the Wetlands Protection Act. We've tried to provide context as to the entire process we need to go through. We've not necessarily, through the filing of the notice of intent, specifically aimed at the Lake and Pond Overlay District or the pre-existing non-conformity. Those applications will be filed and those arguments will be made. So just to be clear, we're identifying the aspects of the product that we intend to highlight with those applications, but at this moment, those have not been filed.
Can you explain quickly the patio that Sally's concerned with, where it is on here and what it is?
Sure. I think the concern is that we are proposing a covered porch currently, and there was a suggestion at the site visit that we convert a covered porch to a patio that is just stone and would not have a roof.
Oh, I see.
over
So
it.
it's a screened-in porch now.
That's what we're proposing, yes.
Okay.
But understand that the issue on that is that if you have a screened-in porch, if you have a porch, it's a by right in this town that you can make it into part of the house.
I get
So
that.
it's
I
part of-
understand that.
it's
Which is
part
why
of-
we suggested in this letter that we would accept as a part of this, that as a part of the order of conditions, the permit that you would grant, that ultimately, in order for this to be signed off on to receive an eventual building permit, ideally, we would get through this process, planning board and select board, clear all of our appeal periods. But before we actually get a building permit, we'd have to record all those. And in this case, we're suggesting that we would also have to record a separate deed restriction above and beyond the special permit that says, regardless of what the town bylaw allows with respect to a porch, we're self-imposing the fact that this could never be enclosed.
So is the screened-in porch the 245 feet?
That is correct. That's really the difference between, and the question was asked at the site visit, could you just eliminate the porch or eliminate the first floor bedroom? The Belloras, it's multiple generations are going to enjoy this house with the parents aging in place. They wanted to be able to have a first floor bedroom and a first floor bathroom. And frankly, it's not a large footprint. It's not a large area of space between a kitchen, dining area, some sort of entertainment space. That's part of what the porch helps with. It really became difficult just in understanding the totality of the project and things to that effect. The applicant's desire
We
to.
can't make a decision. We can't make a judgment based on whether we like grandparents living with multi-generation. Try to make the decisions based on the law. I did have another question though. Driveway, is there a new driveway going in?
It's the existing driveway. It's going to be gravel. Will not be paved.
And that's where the trees are coming down, right next to the driveway.
The trees are actually coming down right in this area here. And those were the trees that we identified already.
They're
Correct.
They're going to die, yeah.
So there's really no healthy trees that are being cut in order to accommodate this.
So to Tom's point, we have traditionally been the first thing that people come to. But there have been projects along the way over the years. I've been at this for 25 plus years. Along the way where we felt that the decision by another board would have to inform us before we made the decision. And I think if I get what most people are thinking here, this particular project, because of the increased size of the house and the fact that it's already non-conforming at 11% and it's moving up to 13%. And because, as I said before, it's a big concern to us, what kind of development's going on around the lake. At least for me, I would want to see if you could get your special permit and if you could pass the LPOD before I made a decision. Because if we make the decision now and we say, yeah, you can go ahead and do that, then we have rubber stamped something that I think most of us don't feel that comfortable about. And also, given the impression that we're okay with it, which I don't think we are. And again, I want to say that, Jamie mentioned need versus want. We have what I consider to be a reasonable alternative, which is a patio rather than a screened-in porch. And they don't seem willing to want to consider that. They can so it's kind of, you either get your bedrooms in your bathroom or you don't. It's my opinion.
So can I?
One other thing here, just so you have some understanding of why we're kind of in this mindset, is there seems to be a runaway train going around Stockbridge Bowl. And every time we rubber stamp one of these things, it sets a precedent. And, we just get to the next one and the next one and the next one. And it's gotten to the point where frankly, I think we've rubber stamped too many things over the years because of what the planning board was going to do, because of what the select board was going to do. And I think those days are over.
There has been occasions, and not so recently, where what we thought we approved isn't what ended up being the final project.
I can assure you, we have no intention of asking for a rubber stamp nor misrepresenting what this commission feels about our project.
Nobody sitting on that side of town ever does.
No, I think you're being clear. It's the order.
And we've had this discussion on other projects where there's I think one would argue that much of what's in the Lake and Pond Overlay District is already covered between the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town Wetland Bylaw. And
If there wasn't that expansion, I wouldn't feel so strongly about it going to LP
Yeah, me either.
But because of the expansion, I do feel strongly about it.
Can I just make a comment? One is that I just want to address a comment that you made, Jamie, and that is that Brent's heard me say this to, I think, this client and others, that I don't consider it, that this process, which is multi-layered, can be quite complex, and not easy, right? To kind of make everybody happy, which is in one room, we've got a lot of people, never mind the other boards and our clients and everything. But I usually describe the process as an organic one, because they ask for, specifics about results, and it's very hard to do. So, oftentimes we do have to tailor a project, as we move through. And so, that is part of the process.
They may not get the horse, they may get the pony.
Well, we're going to see, which one we got. So the other, I just wanted to clarify, one of I think one of the things that we look at with the alternative for, the patio as opposed to a screened porch on that front side is it's going to have a roof. And I'm trying to determine whether or not not having the roof would.
The roof is the additional coverage, was taking us from 11 to 13%. That is.
They don't want to give that up.
Well, let me, I want to recharacterize this here. We've not said, our applicant will absolutely not say no. We haven't said that. We have worked very closely with our client over time. We've started this project a year ago, frankly, just between, frankly, having to resolve a boundary line dispute issue and then the wetland delineation and the soil evaluation process, and trying to really come up with a program that, again, they're not just thinking, what do they want today, but they're trying to think about their parents, they're thinking about their children, eventual grandchildren, and trying to come up with a scheme that will accommodate all of those needs, not just what they need today, but down the road, and willing to self-impose certain conditions to try and address the concerns that have been raised. We're hearing the feedback that you've given us this evening here, and certainly understand that it is likely that a hearing with the planning board will be required before we have a final determination from you all here, and that is information we will be reviewing with our client.
But I have a question, and, I'm not sure of my ground here, but my understanding with deed restrictions is that a deed restriction is valid as long as it doesn't basically violate the law. In other words, if I said that you can't sell my property to someone of Asian descent, well, that's against the law. So you can't put that kind of deed restriction on your property. But at the same time, if something is legal, and to add the addition with the screened-in porch is legal, is it legal to put a deed restriction on that? Something that you're entitled to by law? Can you actually put a deed restriction on that?
We've done it.
This commission has done that many times. That's a precedent.
Okay, just for my information.
Sure, and that's why we brought that forward in an attempt to think that that's a mechanism that has in the past been a satisfactory response to that concern.
Yeah, in fact, the only ones I can remember are in Stockbridge. And they haven't been within the last year or two, believe it or not. They've been, they're within it's like my now retired partners did them on, I think, a couple of projects.
So can I make a motion that we continue this hearing after the applicant goes to the planning board to get approval under the LPOD?
May I just ask a question before you close your discussion with us? Possible. So what happens if we go to the planning board and they say, come back to us when you have a conservation approval?
Well, then we'll have to meet with the planning.
Jamie, we might have to schedule an appointment with us.
Marie is on the thing, so.
Planning board.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question?
Please.
The dock is longer. And is that us or is that planning board?
Planning board,
Okay, never mind.
200 square feet.
But the dock complies with the.
It does.
Yes.
It goes outside this ring.
Hard to get a word
25
in
feet
here.
25 feet into the lake, no more than 200 square feet.
And that dock meets that requirement.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the one final comment because Brent had mentioned a boundary line thing. So there are great relationships with the neighbors. It was a clarification on the boundary lines, not a disagreement. The neighbors are supportive of, the Belloras with their project. So there's no, dispute that they're very friendly and have been supported through this process. So I just wanted to point that out. So
Thank you. And what I was trying to get at was to establish what are the agreed upon boundaries to clarify not irregularities, but vagueness in the deeds that existed between the properties, to establish what is the lot that they will agree upon that establishes the square footage, that establishes the coverages, that establishes the design going forward. So my only point being in the discussion of that they are willing or not willing to do so, it's been a very thoughtful process to try and come up with what they feel is something that will work for
They're not
them.
entitled to demand that.
Never said they're entitled.
We are, but they are not. So you can.
The property next door, unfortunately, which we've just seen, and not unfortunately, but the property that we've just seen next door was also a property that was on a very small lot.
you mean immediately adjacent?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and-
interesting.
Yeah, so again, we're getting to the point, and I know at least one member of our commission has had his property encroached upon by a neighbor recently. And it was a really traumatic, application for us. We went back and forth and back and forth, and we had 57 million site visits and it was never satisfactory to anybody. It certainly wasn't to us. It wasn't to the neighbors. And so we have become a little more jaded about this as to what people want to do and what they should be entitled to do. Because we've had two projects, not this one, but we've had two projects recently that have skirted the 10%, just, like
Nice.
within, if you dropped a hair on the side, it would have gone over the 10%. We just can't keep permitting that. We can't, because we will have that the lake will be, we already have so many issues with the lake. The lake will be inundated with houses and properties and.
And just to join that, buffer zones have a function. I mean, they really are really important. So every 245 feet more in a buffer zone, to me, is really significant. Even with improvements, it's still significant.
Can I ask, how high is this building, this house going to be? Is it going to meet the 35-foot?
No, the existing is 23 feet and the proposal will be 26, so well beneath that.
I just asked because I've probably been at 8 selectmen special hearing meetings over the last, 7 or 8 years, where someone built to the maximum of 35, and there were always enraged neighbors who have been deprived. Many of them, having lived there for like 20 years, suddenly their view is the backside of this new arrival's house. And this has happened over and over again. And I just wanted to make sure this wasn't one
We'll be
of those.
well beneath that 35
Yeah,
threshold.
this isn't one of those cases.
Yeah, there's no
Not going up.
shed problem with
And
it.
this house is not moving, right? It's where it is now, or is it being? pulled back?
We're maintaining the same setback to the lake and the same setback to the road, and we're actually centering the house essentially on the lot. As you can see, we're only a couple of feet from our, this neighbor here, so we're actually shifting it further to the south to get farther away from the, so to a certain degree, while the lot coverage exceeds, we're actually in greater compliance with the setback requirements as it might impact neighbors with our proposal than what we have currently.
So Brent, I have one last question. If we were to combine the 13% of the house with whatever the square footage of the septic system is, what percentage of the lot will be covered?
I don't know that answer. I can get
You've got
that.
your little stick right there.
It's 500 square feet. I just don't know the exact percent, but the leach field will be lawn. I mean, that's a pervious surface. It's not a,
No. That's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is if you combine the septic system with the house, what is the lot coverage percentile?
well, 245 is 2%, so we would be approximately 15% between the house and the leach field.
Yeah, because that's another thing that we've been becoming concerned
But
about.
the leach field does not count against the 15% LPOD lot coverage.
Right, exactly, that to us is becoming problematic because we're seeing, driveways and and septic systems and this, that, and the other thing being added into these.
Driveways on septic system.
Driveways on septic system being added into these projects. And you know, the regulations don't necessarily address those situations, but we are concerned about it.
I think a few things. I would say whatever those properties, I won't make a judgment without talking about a specific one, but generally speaking, those projects that you've seen where a new septic is going in, you are likely taking a property that is not in compliance with Title V with a leach field that's probably in the groundwater table. It's certainly not having 4 feet or 3 feet of separation with a variance. Most of the systems are the ones that I've certainly designed that have come before this commission within the LPOD, and others that I've peer reviewed on behalf of this board and others have implemented those innovative and alternative technologies. So I would suggest that while yes, you are seeing leach fields as part of these proposals, from the health department standpoint, that's actually representing an improvement to the property and ultimately an improvement to the lake. And those systems have, again, based on the contracts that are put in place, provide a higher level of treatment and a higher level of protection to the community than a conventional septic system or a tight tank.
I don't think any of us have a problem with
No.
the septic system. But I would ask you this, and I ask you this because I'm just curious about the mental processes behind this. But when you do a project like this, you have to be aware, I know you know the ins and outs of the laws and everything, as well as anybody in the county probably. And so you're well aware that you're designing something that exceeds what's allowed. And I just wondered, do you talk to your client and say, we think we can push this? I mean, why is it necessary to always push the envelope? I mean, I try to comply with the laws myself, and I don't know who these people are.
That's not a proper characterization of what the law is, though. So, I mean, that's the only point I would make.
Well, I don't know. I mean, why are we discussing all these things?
Because
these exceptions. You know, why are we discussing the
because
exceptions?
The law
13% and the closer.
Right, because I think I explained it before, but because of the fact that they are existing non-conforming with regard to certain intensity regulations, the law, Massachusetts statute, as well as case law, provides a special exception and a special place provides a special case and a special exception for 1 and 2 family residential structures to determine whether or not, if they're going to increase, if they request an increase of an existing nonconformity, whether a permit granting board will decide whether the request is more detrimental or not than the existing non-conforming situation. That's what the law allows and provides. In certain situations, you're right, not in every situation. Right. But that we're asking because that's what the law provides.
This would have gone right through tonight.
Well, it's funny because a lot of times we'll get an applicant that comes in and they basically are doing a wink, wink, this is what we're asking for. And they know perfectly well they're going to have to go back and tell their client that's not going to fly.
We just explained the mechanism, which gives us the opportunity to ask.
Right.
It's no one's saying it's by right. That's why we have to go through this process.
So I would, again, like to,
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I've seen a lot of people come through here. And some people come through and everything's, you know, exactly as it should be. There's no rough edges, there's no difficulties, and we can pass the thing.
We like those ones. Way better.
Like those ones too.
And they're special, you know? And I just wonder, you know, when you're doing this, you know?
They do what the client asks them to
That's
do.
why,
you know?
And just
the people here.
And just to be clear here too, you know, every property is unique. I would love nothing more than to have 4 acres of land on this property and be able to comply with a setback and have the space available to us. That's why there's nonconformities. That's why
but we know too, when a lawyer joins the meeting, that that's because there's issues. That's why you're here, because there's issues.
I remember that.
Yeah. We have a lawyer.
Never coming again.
We have a lawyer threshold, you know, the minute the lawyer walks in, we go, uh-oh.
So I'd like to, again, make a motion that we continue this, that we recommend to the applicant that you go and get permission under LPOD and then come back to us.
we would just actually continue to your next meeting and we'll certainly stay in communication in terms of start the scheduling.
Okay. Well, I want it clear though that we're asking for that step, not to.
No, but just this way, we don't have to re-advertise in the Berkshire Eagle. If you continue to your next meeting.
Yeah.
No, it's just
Saves us
continued.
money and time.
This is the continuation. If you get to the planning board, which I think
It's
next
next
Tuesday.
week, right? Next,
Unfortunately, based on a special permit, the notification requirements here, correct.
Okay. So you second, John?
I did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections?
And I just want to say that Brent, I was extremely impressed with your description of the septic
yeah.
system.
On Saturday, I just talked to class and what contractors have to do in order to be.
Really, like, oh my God, he really knows that stuff.
Is the flatter pitch on those type of systems?
So a leach field, again, we generally want to have just enough pitch so that the water doesn't pool.
Right.
But again, they will be relatively flat, yes.
Okay.
There are systems with the strip irrigation, for instance.
Jackson fell asleep.
If we have, if we do have a steeper topography, for instance, the drip irrigation does allow us to design the system parallel to that grade, so we
Yeah,
have
I just wonder if
less.
that's what the jet does, so that you'll make it.
No, so the jet bat makes the effluent cleaner, the drip dispersal, the way the state has approved that, if we have a sloping site, we can match the slope while being raised above grade, whereas the pipe and stone or the chambers were required to set our elevation based on the highest elevation, and that's what results in these much taller walls and things to that effect.
So is this on one of these mounds?
It's about 2.5 feet tall, correct. So it will be raised above grade, but it is not a 4-foot wall. It is not a structure. It is not subject to the setback requirements.
And I think there's no reserve now, is there?
That is correct, because this is because the proposed house will not increase the number of bedrooms. That's what allows us to design under the remedial use approval to seek local upgrades approvals. If this was, it's an existing 3-bedroom house, if we were going to a 4-bedroom house, we wouldn't propose a 4-bedroom house because we wouldn't be entitled to any of the relief that's granted under a local upgrade approval.
If I
We
can,
thought about this, don't
if I
worry.
can make it to the planning board meeting when you're there, I'll sit in. If you would like me there. Or,
We welcome any presence or feedback that you have.
you know, then we can explain why we're here and we're not floated right through this.
And again, it wasn't our suggestion or intent to
No,
just flow through, but again, just understanding at least what the typical practice has been. They would typically want to see your final vote before, but
They know. I mean, Maria's on, so from the planning board, so she knows what the process has been, and she knows what our concerns are, and she knows why we have chosen to take this route. So she will be able to, even if Ron can't make it, she'll be able to inform the rest of the board.
I appreciate that. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Good, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
what do we got now? 3 Ice Glen Road?
There are a lot.
We're looking for notice of intent, patio area.
Correct.
Care of existing stone.
We have a hard,
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jackson Alberti with Foresight Land Services. I am here to represent the applicants, Kendra and Peter Wild, for work proposed at 3 Ice Glen Road. I think most of you are relatively familiar with the property at this point, but for those of you who may have not been there before, I'll go over some of the existing conditions on site. This project is kind of split into 2 parts, obviously adjacent to the wetland resource areas on site. That pond, and stream, and then the second portion of the project, which is further to the north in the property, which is a separate vegetated wetland.
Do you know where the property is?
Only vaguely from.
Do you know where the property is?
That's what I'm getting into.
Is that up behind where the railroad station up there?
Yeah, it's 3 Ice Glen. It's the monster house with the hedge in front of it. Okay.
Yep, it's map 227, lot 2. And there's a little bit of a locus map there if you are interested, and they're also included in the notice of intent package. So just a little bit of background information on the property. As I said, there's a couple specific wetland resource areas on site. The majority of the property around those wetland resource areas consists of existing lawn, a house, and a carriage house or garage structure. There's an existing U-shaped asphalt driveway surrounding the existing house. And then the remainder of the lot is forested or bordering vegetated wetland. And that's about 39 of the 53 total acres is forested land. So the developed portion is concentrated right about this, the western portion of the property adjacent to Ice Glen Road. This is a man-made pond, which we believe dates back to the 1920s, according to some of the photographs we were able to dig up from the historic register. And that's just a little bit of background information on the site. The proposed work under this notice of intent, as they've stated, is a proposed patio, which is on the other portion, the northern portion of the site. And then the more significant portion of the work, which will be the repair of an existing stone weir, which is located right here at the outlet stream, and restoration of some of this buffer zone area, which is currently
Stone dam, is that what that is?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a stone dam here and then some existing stone kind of retaining wall, which I'll get a little more into here. And so that's pretty much the entirety of the proposed work is restoration of this area, the repair of the stone weir, and then another part that I'll get
The
into.
restoration is removing lawn and replacing it with native herbaceous?
Yep, I'm going to get into that as well. So I'll start with the main portion of the work, well, the most significant portion, which we believe will be the repair of this stone weir. Repairing it in itself won't be all that difficult. It is kind of settled over the years, and we've provided some photos in the notice of intent of its original condition from the 1920s. And currently it's tipped in on its northern side, and water kind of bypasses the weir rather than flowing over it as it was designed to. And as such, the pond has dropped roughly a foot in elevation from what we've been able to tell. And that is represented by our delineated bank of the pond, which is the A series delineation there. So the proposed work will repair that stone weir, bring it back up to roughly elevation 118, which is a assumed vertical datum on site. And that'll be raising the pond roughly 10 inches from 117.2 to 118.
The 118, the 117, what are those?
Say assumed vertical datum.
Inches, feet?
Feet. Yeah.
What is what feeds this pond?
This upland or this up gradient bordering vegetated wetland, which kind of forms into an intermittent stream, much further up gradient, and that flows down the steep hillside here that climbs up into the woods. And that's what's feeding the pond currently.
Does the pond stay,
What's that?
does the pond dry during the summer or does it stay moist?
It's definitely lower than it previously has been currently. The area around the weir kind of continues to erode and the pond is continuing to drop.
Is there any sort of base to it, clay or?
We're not positive what the base of it is. There's been no records that we've been able to find that indicate it's lined by anything.
Just a hollowed out area that'll hold water?
We believe that is the case, and there's constructed stone wall that's kind of buried in invasive vegetation currently here that if you look at some of the historic photographs, you can kind of see the water levels right up at that stone wall and flows over the center of the weir very nicely. And
So
currently,
it's seasonally fed, basically, and it's leaking.
yeah, I guess you could say it's seasonally fed. I've been there many times now in the summer, fall, and winter, and I've seen it kind of steadily decline a little bit over like the past 2 years that I've been on this property.
Good chance there could be springs too, I think.
So there could be some groundwater feeding into it as well, but there's pretty good flow on almost every occasion I've been there coming from this up gradient wetland. It's a very steep hillside here, and I think it accumulates a significant amount of water that flows down into the pond.
So basically the stone dam not only is tipped, the drop, but it leaks.
Yeah, if you can, it's difficult to see because of its very overgrown state in those photographs, but water kind of flows around to the northern side and bypasses what is the Weir stone that was designed in 1920 to maintain the water level.
Jackson, can I ask, proposed 11 trees to be removed? Why?
Yep, I'll get into that in just a second, if you don't mind. I just wanted to touch real quick on, while I'm talking about this weir, that will effectively, as I've said, raise the pond level to approximately elevation 118. And that's represented by this blue line we have shown around the pond here. And in doing so, that alters the entire perimeter of the pond. It's about 663 linear feet of bank, which will be altered. But obviously, as it grows, we anticipate that it will be a gain of
The whole stone, let's call it a dam, weir, have to be worked on? The whole thing?
No, they anticipate just having to kind of expose some of the stone and assess it.
So you'll drain it to fix it?
No, I don't think they really have a need to drain it to fix it. The pond level's pretty far down and there's kind of a trickle of water over.
So is it mud in the middle now, or how deep does it get?
I don't know. We don't know the depth of it.
Can I ask, and I'm completely ignorant on this, so I hope someone else in my commission can help me here. But are there special regulations covering like building like a dam or a weir?
DEP will give you permits with enough drawings and full application.
Okay, and I'm
To
sure
do a
you'll
stream.
have those, right?
There's no special permit required from DEP to repair a dam of this size. It's a small.
It's a small thing.
It's a small. If it was over 10,000 square feet, it would be considered a lake rather than a pond. And that's.
And there isn't really a flowing stream through there that they're gonna impede anyways.
Yeah, the repairs to the weir, we think will be relatively minimal. We'll be kind of removing the vegetation around it, raising that weir level and adding any stonework necessary to support it where it is. That'll all be done with natural stone. There'll be no concrete or mortar or anything like that added to the dam. No, there will not be. It'll all just be natural stone, and they plan to pretty much just use what's on site there, as there's quite a bit of stone surrounding the pond there.
The homeowner has done extensive research on this property, so they're really trying to restore it back to what it was originally.
So we anticipate approximately 696 linear feet of new bank surrounding the pond, which will develop as the pond gradually raises and stabilizes at the elevation of approximately 118. And the other portion of wetland alteration there is some of this open water, as the pond raises about 10 inches, will likely encroach into this up gradient bordering vegetated wetland. And while 10 inches more of water may have a negligible effect on that approximately 95 square feet of BVW there, we are proposing replication just to ensure that there is no net loss of BVW. And we're proposing about 105 square feet of new emergent BVW through grading directly connected to the C-series wetland and the A-series pond.
Planted?
Yeah, that'll be planted with like a wetland seed mix. And there's a very healthy population of yellow iris and some other wetland vegetation in the pond, which you can see in some of the photographs. And we anticipate, and you can even see it in some of the 1920s photos. So we anticipate as the water level rises, that vegetation will just populate a slightly higher elevation and maintain a very nice natural vegetated buffer around the pond. And so those are the two two wetland resource area alterations proposed as part of this work. The alteration of the entire pond perimeter from the raising of the water level, and then this little bit of BVW that may be encroached upon by that rising water.
So there's a 46-inch oak in that area that's going to be new BVW? Is that right?
That's kind of directly adjacent to the pond currently. The water level might come up close to it, but I don't think it'll have any detrimental effect on it as it's been there for.
But it won't get that area, that won't be getting wetter there?
No, I meant it is directly adjacent to the bank and what we anticipate to be the new bank. So it might receive a little bit more water, but I don't think it would have any kind of negative impact.
But you're
on the
working,
bank itself.
just to be clear, you're working in that area?
No, there'll be no work at all in that buffer zone or in that wetland.
Okay.
The only real work there will be the slight bit of site grading to create this extra bit of BBW there.
Okay.
And then the second part of this, which we spoke about a little bit, is the approximately 9,000 square feet of buffer zone restoration. This area is heavily populated by invasive vegetation, and their plans are to remove some of that, expose some of the existing stonework that's been there for many years, and then repopulate that with many ground cover native plants, which we have shown here in their native planting schedule. In addition to that, they're proposing the removal of 11 non-native trees, which consist mainly Norway spruce and hornbeam trees, as well as one maple here that is a native tree. And then those are located here. I've marked those in this pink.
Are the hornbeam the European variety or the American? Or is it American?
I believe they're European variety.
So can I ask, the invasive species that are in your little green area down there, I mean, you get buckthorn, you get bittersweet, you get, what's in there?
It's mostly Oriental bittersweet. There's quite a bit of multiflora rose. There's some Japanese honeysuckle in there, and then some kind of low value.
Mow it off or pull it out, or?
I believe it'll be mostly hand removal. The owners are very sensitive to the nature of the invasive vegetation and how it needs to be disposed of so that it doesn't spread elsewhere.
I'm not clear. So trees are being removed here and planted up here, or this is just the list of what's being planted?
These are the approximate locations we're proposing to replace those trees, as well as 2 down here. So that'll be 11 in total to match the 11 that are proposed to be removed.
And why do you think you said it might be a European hornbeam? Do you know for sure?
I have not identified them. These are done by our survey crew, and I've not identified specifically what they are. The main motivation for removing them is the multiple blowdowns that the property owners have had along this tree line, and the desire to make it look more natural. They've been planted in a line here, a straight line going directly up the hill, and they like to remove some of those large old trees, and are planning to plant 8-foot tall native trees in their place.
How large, how large are the?
We have those listed here on the proposed planting schedule.
Okay, because I mean, trees do a lot of good things, including carbon sequestration.
Yeah, I would agree.
Especially the big ones, and it takes a very long time for 8-inch trees to do anywhere near that.
8-foot tall trees.
8-foot trees. Are we doing a site visit? Can we do a site? We can. Yeah, I'd like to see.
I've been there multiple times.
Yeah, I'd like with all this going on. I'd like to see it.
So do you have any other questions about this portion of the work? I was just going to move on quickly to the proposed patio area, which is much less work overall, but it is nonetheless within the buffer zone. So further north on the property, kind of at the opposite side of the asphalt driveway, located at what is called the carriage house, or like an existing garage building. They're proposing the construction of a patio in place of what is existing asphalt. So you can see here is these outlines that I've made in gray here are the footprint of an existing portion of asphalt driveway, and that leads all the way down to a asphalt parking area at the front of that carriage house. And so what they're proposing to do is remove that entire length of asphalt driveway and replace it with a gravel and dry laid stone patio within the buffer zone here, as well as some little planting areas that are, just partially within the buffer zone. In addition to that, they're also proposing to remove some of these very large trees that they're kind of leaning and threatening the existing carriage house here, and proposing to replace those.
Is this the view looking up the road?
That is, so that picture is kind of taken right here, staring down toward the carriage house. So that is the section of driveway that will be removed and replaced with.
How close are the trees to the carriage house? Where's the carriage house? Is that green?
The carriage house is this white area right here. These colored areas are the new work. And some of those trees they're relatively close and are very old.
So will they fall on the carriage house if they fall?
Who's to say which way the wind will be blowing?
Is the distance such that they're going to land on the carriage?
I would imagine so. They're very tall trees. And the owner has some desire to open up this area a little bit.
Okay. So it's a desire to open up the area, not necessarily that they're hazardous trees. Yeah.
Their motivation is whatever they want it to be. What we're proposing is the removal of these 5 trees and the replacement of those trees with native trees.
Native.
In addition to that, they're also proposing this area of gravel paving here and a gravel walkway out to the rear of the carriage house, which is also a photo of that area. That is existing lawn, and that is to provide access to these garage bays at the rear of the property without having to come right along the edge of this bordering vegetated wetland.
Does the whole blacktop driveway come out?
This whole section of it, and in total, that'll result in approximately 3,400 square feet net reduction of impervious surface in the buffer zone. So from a impervious surface standpoint and stormwater standpoint, this would be a vast improvement in the buffer zone.
Reseeded?
Yeah. I think that this area here would be restored to just existing lawn, like the surrounding area.
So is that the buffer zone, the 100-foot buffers here, so are these outside the 100-foot buffer?
This small section is, yes, but there's a whole section of asphalt that comes down to the front of the carriage house here. And that would be that 3,400 square feet of.
And these trees that you want to take down are in the buffer?
The ones we have listed to replace and the ones we have listed to remove here are the ones that are within the buffer zone, yes.
So if we did a site visit, would the trees that you're planning to remove, would they be like taped or marked and stuff?
We could definitely do that.
What are they? Are they Norway spruces?
Yep, there's white pine, a couple Norway spruces.
I mean, they're native trees.
And a Norway spruce is not a native tree, but no, and that one is unidentified, so we could check that out. And that is pretty much the entirety of work there is removal of asphalt, creation of a gravel and dry laid stone patio, and then some removal and planting of trees within the buffer zone. And there's no direct wetland alteration proposed for this portion of work.
Before you do a site visit, I was going to ask, I used to be on the commission and then I've been gone for 2 years. I remember you when you were somewhat younger. And Foresight used to always send us, I don't know if they still do it, because I didn't get one, of the electronic versions of all this.
Yep.
So that we could study it before the meeting.
Yes, this has been submitted electronically in hard copies for 2 weeks.
It's on the.
Yeah, I think we have, and I contacted Teresa, only she's out of the office. I'm not sure if you all have gotten back, or you've gotten back, or you have gotten your town email.
Not the town.
Okay, so you have to figure out how to work that.
Good luck.
It's Outlook. But when I send something, I send it from my home email and I send it to everybody's. I send it to the commission as a whole, and I also send it to people's home email.
I get it by looking on the town. I never get it.
You never get it from me?
Nope.
And we always provide hard copies to the town as well. If you're.
Yeah.
I like that.
But it is on the
For
town.
this stuff. Usually I like the hard copy.
To double check.
I never get it. I get other things from you, but I never get any of these.
This one, we should have a big computer.
Well, I go section by section.
The applicant sent it to what should be the group email.
That's where I get it.
So if you are not currently on the town email, you may not get it. If you can't access the town, if you can't access the town email, you won't get it. But, and so if you think that you're missing something, like something's come up on an agenda, just shoot me an email and send it to me, and I'll send it again to your home emails. I always ask them to send me stuff on my home emails because Outlook is a pain in the neck.
So I have two questions for the site visit. One, if you could please find out if the hornbeam is native or European. And this just says spruce, so I don't know, it could be red spruce, black spruce. They don't look like Norway from those pictures. But if you could find out, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
When is this work all gonna start and end?
Depends when it's approved. I would imagine we're hoping to start sometime this fall, but that all depends on the.
Not this summer.
Yeah, I don't anticipate they would want to do it in the summer. Even though this pond is very low at the moment, they're going to want to do it when the flow coming in is at its lowest, and they'll have to deal with the least amount of water and potential erosion.
So how many people here have been on the property?
I want to do another site visit.
Oh, you already did a site visit?
Not for this project,
Oh, I
other
see.
things, but I want to see this project.
John's probably parties there.
Do we want to go?
We're going back?
The holiday is this week.
This Thursday or next Thursday?
I'm away.
Both of them?
I don't need to see it
I'm not
again.
around either.
I've been there a bunch of times.
Do you want to see it?
I've been close to it, but not exactly looking at that.
I mean, I'd like to see it, but I would feel comfortable if I didn't.
This
I mean-
Thursday?
Tuesday?
It sounds like a great project, John. There are some things that I wouldn't mind seeing.
I want to see.
I'm
the
gone
tree.
Wednesday through Friday this week and next week, and then the
So what
following
day?
week, I think I'm gonna be away the whole week.
We'll have to Zoom again.
I may have to Zoom, which is always
So the
difficult.
7th
Put together whoever can make it.
or there's the 30th.
I can't do
You want to
either.
do it this week? 3 or 4 of you get together and.
It's either this Thursday
I
or
don't know, I
that
could do this
Thursday.
Thursday, can't
We'll
do
do the
Friday.
30th at 4. Does that work?
What day is it?
Jackson, does that work?
Thursday.
Thursday?
This Thursday at 4, I will be with the Beckett Conservation Commission at that time, unfortunately.
So how about the 7th then? The 7th is
Are you available the 7th?
I do believe so.
Okay.
At
All right, I'll go with that.
At 4?
4 o'clock? 7 at 4.
Works for me.
Thank you.
I actually brought two.
July already.
Can't believe it.
Day's getting shorter.
No,
Okay, Jack.
thank you.
All right. Thank you all for your time.
I don't
Thank you.
expect any real problems.
I
We'll
will,
see what we see.
Sounds good.
A lot of trees
Thank
coming
you.
down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Have a good evening.
Happy 4th of July.
where'd that go?
What do we have to sign?
And we have to sign the
Maple
doc
Lane.
thing. Can I bring,
You can.
can I just bring up a quickie?
Yep.
Because it's for, Tom LaBelle had actually mentioned, and maybe it was Lisa also, about some kind of brochure or pamphlet to create, and maybe you used to have one for people who are new to the process of getting
don't have
permits
one,
or, I think Tom said, because it can be confusing to people, like what permits do they need, or what's the process, or what's the bylaw called, or what boards are involved, and maybe that would be something helpful. I don't want to talk about it tonight because we're not, but maybe could we put it on the agenda to talk about creating such a document?
Can I make a suggestion on that? And that is that maybe it would be a good idea for
Yeah.
like a joint meeting of planning board, the conservation commission, the select board in terms of creating that document. Because we don't want to put something in there from the conservation commission that's going to contradict something from the planning board and vice versa. But I think Jamie's.
That's where the LPOD is a problem. That's where the LPOD is a
That's part of
problem.
the reason I just brought that to the.
Yeah. Because there are
It's all the same
contradictions.
thing?
It's all the same thing.
Oh,
You just,
sorry.
you pop the,
What'd I pop?
That's, oh.
Where'd it go? Ah, defective. That goes with that.
More?
What goes with that?
that's the dock. So it's just
We're just signing one.
any,
What?
don't have room for 9 people on there.
Yeah, I know that. What are we signing?
Need a bigger table.
Where Lisa and I signed.
There's a signature page.
Well,
It has
actually,
everybody's name on it.
the alternates, which can't vote unless there's a vacancy for the evening. So they probably can't sign as well.
Right, I don't think you can unless you're in on a decision or not.
Right.
Unless we're alternating for somebody. Right.
Right, if we don't have a quorum, then you become a full member for that night.
How many do you need?
It is more than half of the,
4 has been.
Four.
We
need 4.
Oh, you always have 4.
no, we don't, no, we don't.
Come on, really?
Not in the fall or
In
winter.
August, we have traditionally not had a quorum at one meeting
Okay.
for whatever reason. You know, it just seems to work out
You
that
can vote
way.
from Zoom, correct?
I'm sorry?
You can vote from Zoom?
As long as your camera's
We
on.
can.
Yeah, okay.
Your
So,
camera.
but when that happened before, we didn't have the Zoom capability.
Okay, before we,
Lisa wanted to talk about the,
performance standards.
no, I thought you want to talk about the scenic mountains.
I want to get an approval on
She felt she
performance
couldn't
standards
give it.
first so that we can. So I don't know if people got a chance to look at what came back from the lawyer for
I
performance
had some
standards?
questions about that.
So we worked on this since I started here, which is for a year and a half.
Right.
It's gone back and forth to the lawyer
Right.
at least twice.
But my question, it's called performance standards, right? And I looked up the term performance standards because it's kind of corporate speak in some ways, you know, it's definitely like, you know, it has its own meaning in the context of organizations, I
So-
guess. And every definition I found, including the one from the Federal Office of Personnel, said that performance standards are guidelines for employees.
So in our town bylaw,
Yeah,
for the wetlands piece says the Conservation Commission can write their own performance standards for
right.
wetlands.
So-
That's what this is.
But my feeling is, so who is the target of this? Are they for us? Oh, so they're not for the general public?
Well, ultimately, they are.
It's part of the bylaw.
Well, part of the bylaw, but I mean, as performance standards, they're more, because if they're aimed at the general public, then the whole kind of legalese thing is, you know, just is counterproductive to me. I mean, most people on a conservation commission aren't going to go through 19 pages of,
But it gives, well, two things. One, if
Never mind.
you look at the WPA, there's performance standards for the resource areas. So banks have performance standards.
sure.
BVW.
Oh, yes, I know.
So these are
banks,
performance
river banks,
standards
right.
for our wetlands
Land
bylaw.
underwater.
Right, so these are performance standards for our wetlands bylaw.
But I mean, all of these things are already in the
No, we made it a little
No, there's a
tougher.
few in there that we talked about.
Yeah, we made it tougher.
right.
The sequence of work with.
We have, I think I said earlier, we've been bitten in the backside
Right.
a bunch of times lately that we're not happy about.
This is
So
stronger.
there are a lot of things that we felt needed tightening up, both for us and from a legal standpoint. If we were to be challenged, we would have a document that we follow that says, this is how we approach this particular problem. And this is how we because there's a whole thing, although it didn't work out so well at one point, but there's a whole thing about what you do as a regular practice. You know, if you do the same thing consistently with every.
Kind of like best practices.
Yes, but consistency is really the thing. Like, if you always do this with a project that comes before you that addresses this particular issue, then nobody can come back and say that you gave preferential treatment to one person's versus another. So this really sort of codifies how we proceed.
Especially for buffer zones, because under the WPA, buffer zone is not a resource area, so it doesn't have its own performance standards.
Sure.
So we added that based on the MAC sample draft bylaw. We took a lot of the language right from
I don't know, which bylaw?
MAC.
Conservation, Massachusetts Conservation
Yeah, no,
Commission.
I used to be a member.
Yeah, so you still are.
You are a member.
Now that you're on here.
So I think another thing is that when the performance standards are discussed, approved, become our mantra, that then it becomes to take the performance standards and turn it into a document to give to somebody who's buying a piece of property.
Well, that I can get behind.
That's what I think that the whole thing needs to come.
Because, you know, in this town, we have bylaws, and if you look up the definition of a bylaw is a local regulation.
Right.
And if you look at our earlier zoning laws and our town bylaws, they're all written in very clear, comprehensible, simple English, so that anybody who lives here can understand them, which I would think is the point. And when you turn everything into, like, they passed that ridiculous, don't feed the bears law. It takes up like 3 pages and outlaws everything from feeding the birds, growing raspberries, having a compost pile. All these things are conditionally illegal if the responding officer deems them so, which to me is like just insane, right? And that law runs to 3 pages of gobbledygook, right? If I may use a World War II term. And I guess I took kind of umbrage at this law because I just saw it as further progress down that road. This is a small town. And people should be able to look at their bylaws and read them without calling their lawyer, And so I would like to see something written that, explains to people what we do and also puts it in a positive light because, this board frustrates a lot of people, and also.
A lot of people frustrate us.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And you gotta know those too, Tom.
Right?
Tom,
Yeah.
coming in at this point, after we've been working on this
I
for a year and a
understand.
half, I'm not willing to
No,
write
I-
this.
I
We've really put a lot of time into it.
I understand, and I'm not denigrating what you've done. I'm just saying the way it strikes me.
Well,
It's just an opinion.
it could be a stepping stone for what you're proposing.
Well, yeah.
Do we take this,
I can imagine you
and
could-
John too, if we take this document and simplify it and make some sort of
Tracy.
document or brochure or whatever you want to call it, that would be we've had.
Sure, if you want to do something.
We've had this before. We've had things that we've given to Ned that he was to give out to every applicant that says you have to do this, 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 and this. It never gets given out.
Well,
It just doesn't. It
maybe
that's
we
a
can
matter
give
of-
it out.
disappears and it's gone, but it's something that should, and we've talked about it before, it's something that should go with the jurisdictional that they get. But it doesn't, and so it isn't there anymore.
But the bad attitude that I do hear from different people around town towards the Concom, and I hear some good, but it really becomes critical when, we had this big controversy over the Stockbridge Bowl and the Floridone and everything else. And there were a lot of things being said about us that weren't true, that we ignored science and all of this stuff like this. And I think sometimes we need a little public relations here, with the community. So when we're in a tussle like that, we don't automatically look like the bad guys, I just think.
We're going to be bad guys no matter what, because these people want to put bedrooms in their house, and they want to increase the size of their house from 11% to 13%. I understand that, but it's enough people.
It's a lot.
It's enough people that they're mad because we don't let them do what they want to do. And, you know, we try to be as even-handed and as rational as we possibly can. But if they don't like the decision that we've made, you know, they're not going to give us a good write-up.
No, but I mean, there are things that we can do to improve our image in the community, you know? I mean, the Conservation Commission wasn't really founded as an adjunct of the building profession, you know? I mean, that didn't even enter into the content.
That's what it's come to be.
Well, that's what it's come to be, but that's only because people have led it, because that's the easier path, really.
Why do you say it's easier?
I say it's easier because it requires no imagination, no initiative, no motivation. You just follow the NOIs. I'm just saying, you know?
But how would you do it otherwise?
Well, I don't know. Early on, they did it by making Bog an area of critical environmental concern. They did it by saving Gould Meadows. That was the Conservation Commission.
Well, the Conservation Commission, I can tell you, had nothing whatever to do with the ACEC.
Well, maybe they didn't have.
Saying.
Well, I don't know.
My mother did.
Well, was she alone? She had no help?
She had help, but not the Conservation Commission. It was the Bog Stewardship
Well,
Committee.
they certainly
So
did.
can I
Gould Meadows.
get us back to performance standards to see if we can try to go through this?
And I didn't mean to offend you, Lisa.
No, I'm not offended, but I do want
But
to make the point that we've worked on it so long, and it's come back from the lawyer now for the second time. And so many of the things that come before us, I wish we had this finalized so we could use it. So this is our chance to really be done with this and finalize it and make it a document that we can use.
So how do
I
we do that?
appreciate this conversation, but I also want to,
Yeah, I don't mean to
get this
keep
approved.
How do we
everybody
do that?
time either.
We vote on it.
To accept.
We vote to accept. But I do want to just point out a couple of things before we vote to accept. Did everyone have a chance to read it?
I got halfway through it, and I did not get to the end of it.
So what was added was Lake and Pond overlay must comply with section 6.5 of the bylaws. In the event of a conflict between these regulations and section 6.5, provisions of 6.5 shall control. So that's new in there, which I think we wanted. She added emergencies on the third page, 1.5. We didn't have that in there.
Is there anything on tree removal?
Yep,
Can I hear that?
yep, that's in that's the part that is of real interest to me,
Me too.
is the buffer. Let me see, she took our definitions of trees under the definition section in the back, defined a mature tree is any tree with a diameter DBH of 4 inches or greater. And a sapling is a tree greater than 1 inch DBH and less than 3.9 inch DBH. So there's definitions in there. And in the buffer section,
That's pretty extreme. 4 inches is a mature tree.
Depends though.
DBH,
I mean, you can, they're not, I'll go along with it if you want. I'm just telling you.
well, sapling then is smaller. DBH,
I'd say 6 or 8 would be more like it, but okay.
If you do 6 or 8, you could have a 30-foot 6 or 8.
Not many of those though.
Yeah, well, we've seen some in some of these wooded areas.
6 inches. Yeah, they do stretch.
They were pretty
So
tall.
this is all within 200 feet of wetlands that this pertains to?
Yes.
What does this
Yeah,
pertain to?
resource area.
Buffer?
this is buffer.
Not necessarily a wetland.
There's like 5 resources.
The resource area can be the lake, can be the river, can be a vernal pool, can be a
Okay.
wetland, it can be.
It's not,
Some water, resources of
What she
water.
has on
Generally.
trees,
it's not buffer though.
No?
It's
Can be
it's
an
gotta
area
be
subject to
determined
flooding.
resource
It
area.
can be,
Right.
can be
well, we have,
underwater,
for the performance standards in the
bodies of
buffer,
water, waterways.
we have replantings are required to have 75% survivability after 2 years. If mortality exceeds 25% after 2 years, the commission shall require new plantings. Any mature tree removed from the site should be replaced with a ratio of 2 to 1, which is more than we've had. We've had 1 to
No, I
1.
got a question on that, if I could just stop.
Yeah, sure.
If you have a small site and you want to build a house, maybe you take 50% of the site for house septic field, just for example, okay? How could you possibly replace?
Well, it doesn't
If there
say
was-
must.
Huh?
It doesn't say must. We can have some discretion.
Oh, good.
That's very good.
Yeah, because
That's impossible.
Yeah, it doesn't say must. It said should. We can have discretion if it's too
Where
small.
possible, or something like that could be in there. You know what I'm thinking about, Ron.
And saplings replaced with a ratio of 1 to 1. And all plantings should be installed as close to the wetland resource area as possible. That's what we put in for trees. In the buffer.
Okay.
So our assignment is to read this document from beginning to end so that we can vote on it next time we meet.
Well, that was the assignment
Lisa was
last
hoping
time.
we would vote on it tonight.
If you want to
Let
take
me
it
ask
another
you
week.
this. How many people have read the entire document?
I haven't, that's the problem.
Have
I
you?
haven't read the whole thing.
I have not.
No.
And
No.
would it be possible to get this in an electronic format where we can make the type a little bigger for those of us with weak eyes?
How
Yes, here we are.
did we get it?
Do we have it electronically?
I don't think
Like
we
it's a
ever
Word
got
document, it's
it.
just got all the comments.
I'm pretty sure we do.
our PDF might be in.
Yeah.
I don't think we,
Better than Word.
did we get it? I thought we got only a hard copy.
Right.
I don't know, I thought we were supposed to get,
No, we got it from Donna. With this because it's printed out funny.
Yeah, no, we can't just vote on it.
It printed out in that little,
No,
yeah,
I'm
we
not
were
asking
supposed
you
to
to
get
vote
it
on it.
electronically
but
somehow.
We got it last time to vote on it this time.
let me see if I can find it.
I was gonna say that was not clear last
Okay.
week.
That's fine.
I wasn't here last week.
Let me see if I can find the electron. I'm pretty sure we have it.
Even if it was a PDF, that would be helpful.
Okay. And one of the questions that she asks throughout
Yeah, I
this
think I might have to reformat it because of the way it printed, if you want it to be bigger.
is whether or not we want an appendix for form. So as you read through it, think about whether you want an appendix for form. And she has her comments in the right-hand column.
Which is, and it's because of the comments that it formats and prints funny,
Right,
because that's what Word does that.
Yeah,
right.
that's why I'm saying I'm gonna have to reformat it to get
Well,
it.
so you just hit the plus sign, you get as big as you need to on your screen.
In PDF, yeah.
And I mean, on both, yeah, either way, yeah.
So, yeah, then if everyone can read it and we can vote on it next time, that would be good.
That is.
There's one other matter that
Sally won't be here?
Won't be here.
I'll try to be Zoomed.
I don't think. Yes, I will. I will be here, I think. Because it's always a disaster when I'm not here.
It's true.
It always goes sideways every time I'm not here.
there's one other matter, and that is the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Committee does not have a representative sitting on it from the Conservation Commission.
Do we or don't we?
Not yet,
Not yet.
but
They won't
I
let
can
me,
appoint
right?
someone if
No,
someone's
went
willing.
sideways.
Huh?
John, are you willing?
Yeah.
Well, my feeling is that probably the most important time for the Concom's input is going to be July and August and September due to Solitude and all those guys. And for 2 of those months, I'm not going to be here. And so I would do it temporarily, but I can't, with a clear conscience, be a permanent member.
I'm hearing a lot of hands waving around.
Do
Is that
what
the committee
you
you're on,
have to
Michael
be
Mayfield?
there. I don't care. But,
Patrick is doing it now.
So you're good for the month of July?
I'm good for the month of July,
How often do they meet?
once a month.
No, twice a month.
Okay, twice a month. You're gonna have to remind me when.
So who's chair of it now? Jamie?
I was, so Patrick is now the select board member. So it'll be, the revote is next meeting on Friday. So I'm not certain.
Oh, okay.
I have,
Now, when the stewardship committee was first conceived, the rationale behind having Jamie as the chair was because she was on the Conservation Commission, and the Conservation Commission probably was more knowledgeable about what goes on in that lake than anybody else sitting in that room. So that's how that happened. And if I'm not mistaken, was it Roxanne who appointed you?
Charlie.
Charlie Kinney. So that's how that happened. Am I asking to be chair? I'm not, but if that's the way it happens, that happens.
For a month.
For a month, until you get your feet wet and you can do it.
Oh, yeah, no, I've been down that road.
All right. Just so we can continue
Okay.
with the stewardship committee without having a big lapse. John, would you please for the
I
month of July?
would be happy to do it until, I
And we'll
leave
find,
office.
and then in that time, we'll find out who the chair will be probably.
Do I have the application back?
Right here, I think.
Yeah, there's two
And I
here.
actually might be here for the first
One
one in
is,
August.
Just one. It
It
got
does-
separated.
It fell apart.
Oh, I'm gonna bring them over to you. You decide what you want.
And will you
I didn't sign them because I wasn't really
So
present
do
for
we have
it.
anything?
say something on the scenic mountains? Is there anything to say? I don't know.
Well, they pulled their project, so.
Right, but on the act itself, you found the deed?
Yes, this is all one.
Did they pull it or?
I found a thing when I was looking around online that said it was just a thing when I looked for Berkshire or Stockbridge Scenic Mountains, and it came up, and that's what I sent everybody.
Yep.
That's all I know. I don't know.
But it said it was registered?
It said it was registered, so whether the Register of Deeds just couldn't find it. Jeff Lynch said that he had researched it and that he had not seen where it had been sent to the Registry of Deeds. But
that document.
this document said it was, so but I mean, it was back in 1988 that this was.
Right, but if that was the missing piece, it looks like you found the missing piece.
Yeah, so I sent it to Jeff too and said that it had been, that it had apparently been,
And you sent it to Patrick and to our lawyer?
I did not.
Oh, you should.
I sent it to Michael. So I figured
So they
he'd
would
follow
compare.
up on that. So it appears that it was indeed registered with the Registry of Deeds. And even if it weren't, according to Donna, it's still a valid document.
Good.
Any other business?
Nope.
Any other business?
One quick question. So how do we leave the getting electronic copies for everybody? Do we have to contact? like,
It should, when they make the application, it comes to the Conservation Commission at stockbridgemass.gov, which should come to all of us who have town emails.
Right. There's the rub.
There is the rub, yes.
Process for getting that town email.
You need to come and talk to Teresa Zanetti in the assistant to the,
Did you get
Who
sworn
was
in?
born with a digital device in her hand, so everything
Yeah.
that comes out of her mouth, you're not gonna understand.
Yes, it should have set you up with you may have it and not know it.
yeah.
You may have it and not know.
So
what you
it's
have.
likely to be W. Luttrell at Stockbridge -ma.gov.
But we would also need a password or whatever to get into it, right?
She'll set
Right,
you up.
you would set that up yourselves. But as I say, so if you see, when I send out the agenda, if you see that there's something on the agenda that you don't think you've seen, just send me a thing and I'll dig it out and send it to personal emails.
Okay, so do that for me too, because I just don't, I only get them on the town website. I
Yeah.
never.
But that's just when I send it out from my personal email, because I don't have that group in my Outlook.
Could you send me the stuff for 3 Ice Glen Road?
Didn't I send it to you?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't have it either.
Okey dokey.
Anything else?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
thank you.